Hello, I'm Stefan from X-Dream Distribution here at the MPTS 2023 together with Piers from Squared Paper. And we want to talk a little bit about your actual customer cases, the use cases where Busby, the software that Squared Paper offers, is used for. Piers, can you give us a little bit of an idea what, for instance, a broadcaster customer type would use Busby for?
Yeah, I mean, Busby is an integration toolkit specializing in media platforms. So if you're looking at joining different monolithic media systems together, you need a way of making some custom glue to join those bits together. So that's what Busby is for. So one of our customers is a large broadcaster in the UK, Sky, and they've recently renovated all of their playout channels. But they wanted to keep their existing scheduling and a lot of the other processes around the edge of their automation. In order to be able to do that, they needed to have some integration. They needed a way of making it so they could keep their whole process backwards compatible. So they're using Busby for doing that. So Busby makes it seem like the new system gets what it expects and the old system sends what it expects. And so yeah, Busby can and then manages the 20 channels through that process.
So you are an interlocutor in between the scheduling system, the actual playout, orchestration, and
so we're doing some sort of schedule manipulation, but also augmentation. So we're adding in. It's not just automated processes, although there are some of those. But one of the strengths of Busby as a toolkit or as a platform is it enables you to mix and match having automated processes with manual processes. So you can say, okay, well this job needs to be done by a human, or this job can be done by a computer. So with the workflows and the way that you will join it together, we've made the Busby system for them to do that.
You say by humans and by the system, what would the humans do on the user interface of Busby in such a case?
So in this case, they may be, for example, making sure that when there's some scheduling information about graphics that's going to appear on the screen, that they need to make sure even like something as simple as the line break is in the right place. Because when someone's putting in the scheduling system, they won't necessarily know how it looks when it goes onto the onto the playout. So Busby would be doing that. Busby is going to be involved in the voiceovers. So the voiceover artists log into Busby and they will write their scripts. They will then have those scripts checked by another human, and then I'll go and actually say the words and upload them into the system. And then that will get sent on to the playout service to do the playout.
When you reflect the project, I assume that has happened in steps or stages.
Yeah.
It's not like all or nothing, you swap it out from one to the other day.
Yeah.
How would such a project happen?
Well, I guess first off, there's kind of a vision about how the architecture of it works at all, which we were involved fairly early on in this particular project. But then it kind of shifts to being, okay, how do we turn that into, in this case, it was fairly much vertical slices. And sometimes it might be sort of feature-based, but in this case, they went, okay, what's the simplest channel that we can do? So we go, okay, we'll work on the simplest channel where we know there are the fewest interactions. And then we'll build up with channel by channel as they get more complicated. So they get more complicated graphics, or they might have some of the earlier channels maybe, only have films, and those films are quite easy then to integrate. So this depends on, that's the kind of way we did it in this particular process. But sometimes you might do it, say feature-based. You might go, okay, we've got enough features now. So with the way that Busby works, is that the idea of it is that you're living with the system throughout the whole lifetime of it. So it's not something where you go, okay, we'll give you a system and now it's done and we've gone away. You're always going to be building on top of it, and you might have it, what you thought to begin with will be completely different from what you've got in 2-3 years time, because it's an iterative process.
And now Busby's in place. Do you have any idea of what they probably want to do next with it?
There are ideas. I'm not quite sure what
probably
stage they're at.
Not disclosed, but
yeah, there are definitely ideas about where we can pushing the boundaries in both directions, pushing the boundaries maybe more into the scheduling side. They have a few spreadsheets which would be good still to get rid of. I think a lot of customers have spreadsheets that we want to get rid of, and Busby is a really good tool for doing that. Instead of you having one spreadsheet you copy around thousands of places, you can now have the data all in one place, multiple people can access it, you've got an audit trail of it, so there's lots of advantages for having that. There's just some complications in getting to that point, of course.
Do you deal with run logs as well? So
in that particular case, in this particular customer we don't, but in other customers we do. So we have for Redby we do a lot of as-run handling as well. So Redby is a big playout provider in the UK. So they have multiple, in particular for their case, the complication that we deal with is they might have multiple playouts across different redundancy zones, and they need to make sure when their as runs come back that those then get combined together so they have a single as run, which is what actually played out rather than what went out in a one playout channel. So there's a number of other manipulations in there as well.
So far we spoke about typical requirements of a broadcaster in its broadcasting or layout facility and needs. Now let's jump into a totally different situation and let's look at a totally different type of customer. You have served the UK Parliament as well. Tell us, what have you done for them?
Yeah, so this was a COVID piece of work, I guess. So when COVID first happened, when the disaster first happened, Parliament still wanted to carry on as quickly as possible. So they introduced remote working for all of their MPs. But they found it was a very cumbersome process because whatever remote procedure they had, they needed to have many, many people. So for each 3 MPs, pretty much they had a person dealing with it. So it was very user intensive. So after about the first 6 months of COVID, we were then introduced to Parliament as a possible solution vendor to come in and work out how we could make that more efficient, how we could have a centralised process that we could onboard people to, so that the MPs could come, using Zoom in this case as the platform. But for Zoom you can only have 50 people in a Zoom call, or you could at the time, I think it's increased now, but at the time you could only have 50. And so then how did you amalgamate multiple Zoom calls together? And similarly, how do you then make sure that Zoom output is available to go on to actual broadcast television? Because for Parliament, as well as them doing it internally for themselves, everything is broadcast. So we needed to work out what the junction between the IT world and the broadcast world was then. How do we deal with that? So we put in a largely bespoke Busby system in order to be able to do a lot of this management for them. So Busby, underneath in the mechanism, is a service bus and a microservices platform and a toolkit for you to build these sorts of systems. So the stuff I was talking about before for playout automation or for that sort of integration uses the same toolkit, but then completely skinned in a different way. So for Parliament, we had to write specific user interfaces for them, which were still built into the same user framework and had the same audit trail, had the same workflow management and all those sorts of things. And so now, although they've actually stopped using remote working in Parliament since it's a political decision, but they've now, because they like the system, they're introducing it into their committee rooms. So we're now in the process of putting the same sort of technology into the committee rooms as well. So that's an ongoing process, again, with this iterative feature iteration now.
Piers, have many, many thanks for these insights. And you have found yourself in such a situation like this. You have projects where you need integrations. You see all these difficulties that can be addressed by Busby. You want to build larger ecosystems and you need a competent partner that helps you to understand the problem and to solve the problem. Then please make your way to our website, www.x-dream-group.com. There, on one hand, you will find information, and on the other hand, you will find the contact details that leads us to us and to the competent team that solves your problems as well. Thank you so much for listening.